So we can search for new content, but it's kind of laggy when we type. It'd be really great if we could somehow throttle how often we type here, or how often we kick off a new search. We don't really want to present the user with something that's super laggy when they start typing. And in addition, it's kind of jarring to see the search term on the right update so often. So if we could just kind of throttle it a little bit, I think we'd be in a pretty good spot. To do this throttling, we're going to make use of a function library called Lodash. Lodash contains a ton of different utility methods, one of which is called debounce. Debounce can be used to basically throttle how often a function is called. It's kind of hard to explain in words, so let's do an example with it and see how it works. The first thing we need to do is install Lodash. It's not included with this starter library right here, so we'll need to install it as a separate library using npm. So over at the terminal, we'll do npm install -- save Lodash. This will just take a second, and there we go. Now at the very top, we'll go ahead and import Lodash into this file. Rather than saying Lodash, we usually use an underscore when working with Lodash. Okay, so now let's talk about exactly how we're going to do this. We have this existing function right here, onSearchTermChange, that takes a new search term and calls this.videoSearch and passes the term right on through. We really want to only be calling this function once every, say, so many milliseconds. This is really the place where we want to throttle it somehow. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass a debounced version of this function right here down into search bar. Let's give it a shot. We'll write the code out and then talk about what's going on. So we'll say const video search, and then we'll write _debounce, which will get a term. Notice how we're going to do a fat arrow function here. This.video search term and 300. Make sure you've got the curly braces here as well as a comma. These are two separate arguments. We've got a function here and then 300, a number. Next, we'll go ahead and pass that new video search function into this property for onSearchTermChange. So what's going on here? Let's talk about it. We created a function here, a fat arrow function, and we passed it to debounce. What debounce does is it takes this inner function right here, this one that we pass, and it returns a new function that can only be called once every 300 milliseconds. That's what the 300 over here is. It's a number in milliseconds. So we basically get a version of this inner function that can only be called once every 300 milliseconds. Now we can call it as often as we want, it just won't run until 300 milliseconds have elapsed. So if we call it more than, if we call it 5 times within 300 milliseconds, it's not going to throw an error or something. We're not going to get a crash, but it's just not going to call the original function here. So by passing this new debounced version of video search into search bar can update as often as it wants. It can call this callback, props.onSearchTermChange all the time. It can call it just repeatedly, but it's only going to run once every 300 milliseconds. Because this function is the only way for the search bar to kick off a new video search, it effectively means that we're saying, hey, you can only trigger a new search here once every 300 milliseconds. So let's go ahead and save this, and we'll refresh, and now let's give it a shot. So I'm going to put in cooking, and that's pretty nice. So you can notice that while I was typing, it didn't do a change, but as soon as I let go, it went ahead and did the search. In addition, I can say cooking and then wait for 300 milliseconds. It'll do a search, and then keep typing with, there's a search, olive oil, like so. So this is a great way to limit or kind of throttle user input and make sure that they don't search too often. This is also the same way that, say, Google Instant Search works. So if I open a new tab here, go to google.com, and let's say I want to learn about coffee, you'll see that after, I'm still typing here, still going, but I still have search results popping up here. It looks like I did a recent search for CoffeeScript key interpolation. So let's say, and there's our, well, maybe not, key. Come on, Google. Okay, so I guess it only does it one time, but I think you get the idea anyways. Oh, it's because I just completed the recommended search. So let's try doing coffee maker. There we go. In Apollo. Okay, again, you get the idea. We can do coffee maker. Great, just like that. Okay, cool. So this is pretty darn awesome. Let's wrap up inside the next section.